Hey there, and welcome to the Event Crushed podcast. Each week, we'll be chatting about all things wedding industry, entrepreneurship, and how to crush it in life and business. I'm so glad you're here. Now, let's dive into this week's episode. Hey there, and welcome back to the Event Crushed podcast. Thanks so much for being here today. Hope you're having a wonderful day so far. And I'm excited to share this week's interview with you. I interviewed Hannah of Made with Boldness. And Hannah is a Showit website designer for creatives who want to stand out boldly on the net and not so secretly loathe social media. So I know that's probably some of y'all. We had a great chat about websites and branding and copywriting and all kinds of good stuff as it relates to wedding pros and just having a great website, things to avoid, things that we need to make sure we're having on our websites. We covered quite a bit, and I think there's a lot of really great advice in this episode. And I'll share Hannah's website and all of that good stuff in the show notes. So make sure to check down below. But she offers Showit website templates. She also does custom Showit website design, and she offers on-demand website audits. So if you are in a position of wanting to level up your website and kind of take things to the next level, she would be a great resource for you. So I hope you enjoy the interview and have a wonderful weekend. Hey, Hannah, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, Becky. I'm so glad you had me.
Of course. Yeah, I'm excited to get into this whole website conversation. And before we jump into it all, I'd love if you could share about yourself and how you got to where you are designing Showit websites and all the fun things that you do for wedding pros. So if you could just share a bit about your background and how you got to where you are today, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so I started my business in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, much like everyone else. And I actually started out on Squarespace first, which is where I would just design exclusively. And then they did some, without getting into the technical aspects of it, they made some changes. I decided I didn't agree with the way they wanted to run their platform anymore, found Showit, and it's a better fit for wedding pros. So it worked out, like who I wanted to serve fits better on Showit. And then just 4 years later, here I am. I love working with creative entrepreneurs. I have DIY friendly Showit templates for people who want to do it themselves versus work with a designer, because I think there is benefits to both depending on where you are at your business journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mentioned this on my last interview episode with Adriana of Ava and the Bee, but I've never used Showit, but it keeps coming up again and again. And like whenever I hear somebody talk about Showit, they're just raving about it. So it makes me want to switch from WordPress, but I've had a WordPress website for so long that the idea of like switching over freaks me out. But then it also sounds like the blogging part of it is WordPress essentially. So
Yeah, it is. And the benefit of Showit is that you don't have to worry about getting your own hosting, which can get complicated with WordPress. And if you don't have the right plugins, you can get hacked, and it's kind of a mess. So Showit takes care of that aspect for you. But it technically does work off of WordPress. It's like the simplest way to put it is you're creating a Showit theme for WordPress, and that might still sound too technical, but if anyone's familiar with Element or Divi, it's kind of a similar concept, except with that, you would still need your own hosting versus Showit takes care of the security and the updates and the hosting for you, so you don't have to worry about it. I remember one horror story I heard where somebody had like a casino operating out of the back of the end of their WordPress website, and I'm like, no one has time for that. Like these resources are out there that can do the host management for you. So you might as well use them. So
Mm-hmm.
when you log in to Showit, you do your design work inside of your Showit account, and then you do have a separate login to blog in WordPress. Some people don't love that, but honestly, what I found is it helps me like separate my thoughts and be like, okay, I'm writing a blog and not get distracted by, oh, but what if I redesigned my sidebar right now? Like, it keeps me focused. So I like it, but pros and cons depending on how your
Mm-hmm.
brain works. And then
Right.
for the design side of it, Showit offers total pixel by pixel editing. So if you want to move anything anywhere, you can do it. And you can do cool automations. You can have, they call sections of websites canvases, so you can rearrange those. You can duplicate them. You just have the ultimate amount of flexibility with it. And Showit originally started out for photographers, specifically wedding photographers. So that's still the like ideal person for it, is someone in the wedding industry or photography, because they do work better for service-based businesses. You can sell products off Showit, but it gets a little more complicated, where depending on how big your shop is, it might not work for you, but there's some nuances where it could. But most of your listeners probably don't have a huge e-commerce shop, so this wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
applicable.
Yeah. I didn't realize that it was so like all in one, like that you didn't need a separate host, because like that can get a little complicated with WordPress and all the plugins and everything. So that's really good to know. And honestly, that does make
Yeah,
me
you
want to
can
switch.
use plugins within your blog to give you more features. Like if you wanted to have WooCommerce connected, if you wanted to sell a few products, or if you wanted a certain blog plugin for comments, or it's one of those things where it kind of depends on, do you want to dive deep into that? Like, you don't need to. You could use your website with no plugins at all and it would work fine. So it depends on the needs. I feel like a lot of people think, because they have, oh, it's WordPress in their head, that oh, I'm going to have to use a lot of plugins, and that's not true. It just depends on what your needs are, and most people don't usually need very many.
Mm-hmm.
It's one or two usually at most for the average person. So
Mm-hmm.
Showit actually has a plan that doesn't even have blogging capabilities. So
Mm.
with that, you wouldn't even have the WordPress login, and could just have a site that just has your services listed in
Mm.
galleries and not have the blogging option. But
Interesting. But most people should probably have a blog, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, wedding pros should definitely have a blog.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like SEO in that episode you did with I forget her name, Adriana. Is it Adriana from Ava and the Bee?
Adriana. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was a really good episode because she explained SEO probably more simply than I could have. And that was,
Mm-hmm.
so if anyone hasn't listened to it, go and do it, because I did, and I liked it. And this is what I do, and I appreciated it. Yeah, not blogging every wedding that you do, quite honestly, is an underutilized tool as a wedding pro. Local search has a much narrower field of competition, where it's a lot easier to rank for Colorado Springs wedding photographer than it is for Showit designer, because
Mm.
theoretically I could serve anybody anywhere in the world, versus unless you're a destination specific business, you know, you have a narrow city or possibly county, maybe state that you're serving. So you don't need to worry about,
Mm-hmm.
if you're, in my example, in Colorado, you don't need to worry about trying to reach people in Hawaii. Like, your field is narrowed so much, where it's underutilized blogging, because blogging also proves you as an authority.
Mm.
So it's not even just your website showing up on Google, it's you're giving that content to people that you want to reach, so they can see, oh, she knows what she's doing, or he knows what he's doing. because
Hmm.
they can see, oh, this is what a wedding with them looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. That's come up on a few episodes now, just the importance of blogging. And so I'm glad we touched on that. Okay, so we are going to get into all things websites, and I really want to talk about what kind of makes or breaks a website to you. So we've all seen really great websites in the wedding industry, and then we've seen some, not so great websites. So I would love to know, like, in your eyes, what makes a truly great website, and can you walk through like some of the essential components of a great website?
So there's three major categories to what makes a website great for wedding pros. So we already talked about blogging and SEO, but another side to that coin of having great content on your website is having good copywriting that is going to walk someone through, this is what I do, this is how I can help you, this is how you can book me. That's often a missed opportunity with wedding pros, especially photographers specifically, where it'll just be a long list of photos, hundreds of photos, and it's like, okay, these are beautiful, but then how do I work with you? Like, there's no call to action leading people to say, you know, here's how you can work with me. Like, you need to, for lack of better words, dummy proof everything and walk people through, you know, the step 1, step 2, step 3, so they can decide whether they want to work with you, because confusion in that area will cause them to just say, peace out and go to the next website on Google. Maybe, however many years ago, you were kind of stuck with, whatever options were limited to your area, but now with Google expanding it, if someone can't quickly discern whether you can solve their problem, they're going to go to the next search. Like, they're not going to spend time and waste their time from their perspective searching and scouring through your site trying to figure out what you do. I can't remember the exact amount of time off the top of my head. I think it's less than 5 seconds that you have to catch someone's attention when they're on your website. And then the max amount of time they're going to stay is less than 2 minutes, like on average. So you have very short time to catch someone's attention. So that would be one category, was general content with copywriting and blogging for SEO. So then the other would be navigation, which is just, can I scroll through your website easily and be able to understand with the content that's on there, but also just plain be able to use it. Like, do the buttons work? Is your website optimized for mobile and desktop? Does your mobile menu work, like the literal user experience of it? And like, can I click and go through and browse easily and find things without having to search for them? If at any point someone's on your website and they feel like they have to search for something, most likely you're going to lose them and they're going to go to another site. And you want to try to keep them on there as long as possible so that they then inquire. Part of that is having call to actions. So you're saying, hey, you want to look at my galleries? Go over here. Hey, you want to look at my services? Go over here. Again, kind of like I said, for lack of better words, dummy proofing things. Because, and then the third category would be the actual design, which probably should have started there because it's website design. But just, is it visually appealing to look at? Which is admittedly is a broad term because there are different styles. Do you do boho weddings? Do you do fine art weddings? So, but is it somewhat modern? Or does it look like it's out of 1995? Like, does it have professional imagery so that you don't have blurry iPhone photos on there? For photographers, that's obviously not going to be an issue, but if you're a wedding planner, maybe a lot of your photos, have just been taken on your phone during an event, and those are great to maybe incorporate somewhere, maybe on the blog, to kind of show the raw side of things, so everything's not perfect, because that is a trend I'm seeing with websites, is having little bits and pieces of personality and realness. So not everything's looking like the picture perfect, you know,
Mm-hmm.
dream situation, but the majority of it, you want to appear professional and
Mm-hmm.
showcase your best work. So, yeah, three main categories would be navigation, having good content, and is it nice to look at?
Okay. Well, thanks for breaking that down for us. It's nice to think about it in like those different categories. I'm actually in the process of I'm going through like a full rebrand and website
That's
redesign right now.
exciting.
And super exciting, but it's like there's just so much. There's the copy, there's the physical, design
Mhm.
of it and how it's laid out, there's the navigation, and just thinking like when you said that like the max that somebody's going to spend on my website, I'm like, man, like all of this time and money and like somebody's only going to look at it for like 2 minutes.
Some
Yeah.
people will stay on longer, and that's another reason to
Hmm.
have all that blog content is because if you have lots of blogs that are intriguing and they're like, oh, I want to read this one too because she has more
Hmm.
information on planning weddings and invitations, or oh, I love all these photos. I've got to see that. I want my wedding to look like that and see all of them. So
Hmm.
that can extend the time. Just the less clear you are, the shorter the time is going to be. So if you can provide
Hmm.
more content, more easy to navigate, more beautiful things to look at, the longer that time will be.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We have such a quick chance to get them to like grab their attention and get them to, think that our services are worthwhile. So it's so important. And so I appreciate you sharing all of this. So we're gonna move into maybe some things you've seen that are not so great. Like, are there any things like any like red flags or things that you've seen? I'm sure you've looked at a lot of websites being in
Yes.
the industry that you're in. Is there anything you can share about things you've seen that you think, don't work super well or things that we should avoid?
Well, I kind of already touched on this, but having just a big wall of photos with no context is a huge one, specifically
Mm-hmm.
with wedding photographers, but it kind of bleeds into other industries too. And or even if there is copy along with it, a lot of times there'll still be too many photos. Like I've seen ones where there's like 100 plus, and it's like no one has time for this. Like literally no one has time. So depending on what industry you're in, how much you want to show, anywhere from like 20 to 40, honestly, is a good range. If you get more than 40, you're depending on how you have it displayed, it can become too much. So that's another area where you can kind of play with, is it a swipe through gallery with your thumb? You can get away with more versus if I'm having to scroll down forever and it feels like I'm falling down an endless pit of photos that it's like that's too many.
Mm-hmm.
And then not having call to actions again, like you need to say what you want people to do. They're not going to do
Mm-hmm.
it just on their own. You need to spell it out for people. Go click here if you want X. Go click here if you want Y. And then another big one with wedding pros is a lot of people want to end up somewhere with the fine art look, but fine art doesn't mean fine print. And a lot of times the fonts are so tiny that they're unreadable. And that's a huge one, not just for general user experience, but for accessibility. That can be a huge problem. And usually 16 pixels is like your bare minimum for your paragraph font, and a lot of people want to try for 12 or 14, and that doesn't sound like it would make that huge of a difference, but it does. And because you don't want someone to have to like lean in closer to their computer and squint and be like, I think that says wedding. Like, I'm not sure. And obviously headlines are going to be even bigger, upwards of 50, quite honestly. Like, when in doubt, make your fonts a pixel or two bigger. You will not be disappointed. It will elevate your site so much, just that one thing. And then another thing, and this isn't so much website design, but I see it a lot in the service industry, and this is a kind of a hot take, but show your pricing on your website. It doesn't need to be exact down to the penny, and I'm going to charge you 81 cents kind of thing. But you need to at least give a range or an idea of what someone can expect to work with you. A lot of people try and say, well, what if a celebrity landed on my page? And it's like, well, if all of your clients are celebrities, that's a whole different discussion. First of all, who are you? I'd like to know your secret on how you're getting all these celebrity clients. Second of all, you want to gear your website towards who is your most ideal client, not your dream scenario. What if blah, blah, blah showed up on my doorstep and wanted me to plan their wedding? Like, who is your average ideal client? And someone who has a $500 budget and your packages are start at 5,000, that can cause, where they inquire and you think they're going to be great. And their budget might get bigger, but it's probably not going to 10x. Versus if someone goes on your website, their budget's 4,000, but your packages are 5,000. Like, if they like you enough, they might still inquire because it seems attainable. Versus going from 500 to 5,000 is a huge jump, and then you end up on an awkward discovery call because I've never experienced that before at all, where someone hasn't seen your prices and you're like, well, you're really nice, but this isn't gonna work. That's kind of the big ones. I could spend all day nitpicking at more, but that is definitely some like kind of quicker fixes, especially with the pricing and the fonts. Like, please go do those right now, like today.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I love, okay, so the font thing, I love what you said, like fine art doesn't equal fine print. That's great. I'm almost certain I have fonts on my website that are like a 12 pixel. So I'll have to work on that for my new website that's coming out.
Family, because they are all different. So if you find that yours is 12, and it's big enough, just usually I've seen enough to know that usually it's around the 16 range is kind of the bare minimum. But they all are, the font families get into different sizing just depending on who's created them, where that's not that's just the best guess I can give.
Perfect. No, it's good. I mean, it's really good advice. And it's something that I don't think I fully, obviously I want people to be able to read my website, but that's an easy fix. Like you said, like I could go in there and I could just make those, whatever, paragraphs are 12, I could bump it up to 16. Like that's a super easy fix. I'm 100% with you on the pricing. That it like, as a consumer, it drives me crazy to think about all these wedding pros that I'm, putting myself in potential clients' shoes, and they're going on their websites and they're seeing their work and they're, inquiring, but the whole time they have no idea what this person charges. And I'm like, one, that's going to deter people from reaching out to you, because a lot of people, these days, especially, like they expect pricing. They want to see at least a starting price or a range. And when they come to your website and you're immediately not giving that information, it's like a turnoff. Like they're like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to go find somebody else who's like more upfront, with their pricing, and they're going to find somebody who does have it on their website and they're going to book that person. So people are potentially, missing out on those clients. And it just makes the whole experience so much better for potential clients to be able to like have that information up front and to know, because they can also, if it's clear, okay, I can't afford this person. One, they're not wasting their own time by inquiring with you, and they're not wasting your time by like inquiring, setting up a console, and potentially going through all of that, like you had mentioned, and then finding out at the end, oh, I can't actually afford you. Like that's not a fun conversation for anybody.
No, it really isn't. Really, you want to think about your website as reducing friction from people inquiring from you with you, because obviously you want to repel people who are not in your price range or just not a good fit for XYZ reason, like they're not the right fit for you. So you want to reduce the friction of, weeding those people out, but also making it so easy for the ideal clients to say, yes, like I get it. Like there's no, like this fits perfect with me. You've got the style, I've got the budget. Like let's get on a call. Like it's going to increase your inquiries a lot because you're making it so easy for them to say yes if you're the right fit for each other.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so as we are heading into the fall, it's the end of September. Oh no, it is fall. It's actually as of a few days ago, it is fall now.
I love fall so
um,
much. I'm so excited
yeah,
that it's
yeah,
finally
same.
here.
I'm with you. You already have given a lot of great advice. So I don't know if there's more to add to this, but basically, a lot of wedding pros are probably potentially in similar boat that I am, where I'm going through, rebrand, I'm redesigning my website. So I imagine others are doing the same thing.
Seems to be the year of the rebrand for everyone. Like I keep
Mm.
seeing over and over and over again, everyone rebranding and then redoing their websites. Like it's going to trickle into 2025. So that's another
Hmm.
thing to think about. If everyone's rebranding and redesigning your website, you're not. I mean, if you just did one in 2023, maybe that's not applicable. But if it's been a few
Hmm.
years,
Hmm.
you're going to be behind now because everyone else
Hmm.
has already started getting on the train of I'm gonna, up level my website and my branding and put a better foot forward. So if you're not headed in that direction, you're gonna end up behind at some point.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. There has been a ton of I've noticed it too. Just a lot of rebranding going on, which is really interesting. I didn't really connect it that like this year it just seems like people are going for it. I wonder why. I'm like wondering why that is. And I have a new question for you. I'm just curious because I'm sure there's different thoughts on this, but how often do you think that a brand in the wedding industry should do a full rebrand? Like how many years? How often should that be happening?
That's a really good question, and I'm not gonna have a concrete answer because it does vary, but
Hmm.
some things to think about that could indicate you need a new brand or new website. First of all, you may need one more than the other, possibly. I mean, usually if you do a rebrand, you're going to have to redo your website also because those two go together. But sometimes if your branding is still okay, you might just need to redo the website if it's more just your offers have evolved versus your whole visual experience. So some indicators are if you just don't like it anymore. That is a valid reason to rebrand.
Hmm.
That's why I rebranded this year to different colors and fonts because I'm just like, I don't like looking at this anymore. Like, this doesn't reflect my expertise anymore or the style I've gotten into and the way I speak. Like, I needed a refresh. And so I did my branding and website over again earlier this year. And then, so if you just plain don't like it, that is a super valid reason to start thinking about, hey, maybe I need to work on both or either of these.
Hmm.
If you're getting traffic to your website but not seeing inquiries, that's an indicator you've either got a copywriting issue and or a visual design issue. Or could be navigation also, but it's probably one of the other two. So if you haven't invested in a copywriter or some copywriting templates to help you with that, that can be an indicator, that maybe you need to do that, or it could mean it's a design issue and something's not connecting where, people are getting onto your website and it's not matching your authority. It's like there's something off. And then another indicator can be if you're not getting any traffic at all. So that can just be an SEO issue, a content issue in and of itself, and it has nothing to do with the design. The design might be perfect, but it could mean that you've got more back end issues that are like not having alt text, not having a speedy site, which some of those you can tweak without having to fully redesign and rebrand, but you may start getting into looking at it and go, why don't I just do this whole thing? Like maybe sometimes it's easier, honestly, to start from scratch than try and, piecemeal and band-aid and fix. So it depends on your situation, but I know I'm going to think of another as soon as we stop recording. But
That's okay. Those were great. Yeah, no, that's super helpful. I think that will help people kind of figure out like, okay, do I need to go through a rebrand? Is it time? Yeah. And I think that's better than just, you should do it every 5 years. Like that's way more
Yeah, there's really not a hard
tangible
and
and practical.
fast rule with
Yeah.
years. I mean, if it has truly been five, that can be kind of an indicator. If it's been longer than five, that's a huge, red flag in the air, being like, hey, you need a rebrand, because so
Hmm.
much has changed since even just 2020 to now. I think that might be part
Hmm.
of why everyone seems to be rebranding and updating their websites, is because things, totally changed in 2020, and then we kind of rode the wave, and then now it's like, okay, this doesn't reflect me anymore. Like, I need to
Right.
upgrade it. 4 years have passed, so 4 or 5 years, like I said, can be an indicator,
Hmm.
but other than that, it's going to be more analyzing, do I still like it, and is it still working? And
Hmm.
like, obviously, if you've never worked with a designer with branding and you've just kind of DIY'd it, that can be an indicator where,
Hmm.
maybe it's finally time to invest in that. Or if you've never worked with a website designer, you've DIY'd and maybe you don't have time now. First, maybe you did before and you want to have it be more professional and have a second set of eyes. So it just kind of, this is one of those things where it's so nuanced depending on what you're doing. And if it's working, great. So you have to kind of
Hmm.
decide, is it working or not? Because if it's not
Right.
working, then that's a huge indicator, because you're
Hmm.
not getting enough inquiries. And then if it's more just you don't like it, but it's working, well then, you know, that's either a huge indicator you should, because you want to be proud of the way you're presenting yourself online, but
Hmm.
there's maybe not as much rush to do it, would be the difference, versus if it's just plain not working, like this needs to go to the top of your to-do list, versus more of
Right.
a think about it and make the change.
Yeah. Definitely. I think those are all great tips, and just things for, my listeners to be thinking about. Is it time for a rebrand? For me, well, my current brand, I launched the end of 2018, early 2019. So, I mean, it's been 5 years,
Yeah.
um, almost six, right? So yeah, I definitely, my brand has been working just fine for me, but I just felt like I'm just in a very different place with my business and my life. And it like, since having that initial brand, I bought a rental company and had a rental company for 4 years and then sold that and like had the same brand the whole time, which like my plan was to rebrand when I had that rental company. So there's been a lot of iterations and different things. And now it's, I'm just so excited for just this whole new thing. So, and then I loved what you said about copywriting too, because this is the first time that I have hired a copywriter. I'd never done that before. I'm not a great writer. So I knew, I was like, if I really want to like up level my brand and my website, I need to bring somebody in. And so I did have somebody she did all my my homepage copy. And I think I'm going to use some of her templates for like my about page and that kind of thing. Cause yeah, that's definitely a way to take it to the next level. So highly recommend hiring a copywriter
Yeah,
as
I
well.
agree with that message. Some of my best investments into my website has been copywriting templates, because
Mm-hmm.
that kind of gives you the foundation of what your website should look like. Like, copy should come before design, whether you're working with someone using a
Mm-hmm.
template or just, crossing your fingers and hope whatever you write works. Whatever method you're using to write, like
Mm-hmm.
the design of your website should highlight the words, not the other way around, where the words are just
Yeah.
working around however you've designed things. And that can
Yeah.
be a big issue with templates, is sometimes, people try and squeeze things in.
Mm.
And so, like, if you are DIYing and trying to do your website yourself, that can be a thing to look at when searching for a website template, is like, how has the designer crafted it to be copy friendly? Because a lot of times, when you look at DIY templates, they're not made with that in mind necessarily. They're made to look more like beautiful in like a magazine. It's like, well, you need to be able to browse the magazine too, not just look at it and understand the sales argument, not just, oh, this is pretty to look at, but I have no idea how to work with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Going back really quick to what you were saying about copywriting. So I'm using the same designer that I use to do my current brand. And she originally was gonna kind of the service that I did was like a rebrand and then like website tweaks. So she was gonna kind of like update my website, but not completely redesign my website. But when I sent her my copy, she was like, oh, this is really different than your current website. So like we are going to have to, kind of rework my whole homepage, which I'm so glad that she was willing to do that and was aware that like the copy kind of comes first and like, has to, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting because I figured like, oh, she'll just fit in the copy with wherever it fits in with the design, but she really had to like design around the copy. So I just thought that was an interesting point and something that I just recently learned. So
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it'll work out where you can just copy and paste and fit it in there. A lot of times with paragraphs, especially because there's only so much you can do with a paragraph. But it,
Mhm.
it depending on how, is your copy longer versus the template shorter or whatever, it can become where a lot of times, if you're not getting inquiries from your website, that's a huge indication that the copy isn't displayed properly.
Mm.
Because, like I said, you want the design to highlight your sales argument and make it, point to the words that are explaining, this is how I work with you. This is what you do, here's a call to action after the copy.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, as we are getting closer to wrapping up, like I said, you've already given so much great advice, but is there anything else that you would share with wedding pros who are listening, as it pertains to their website and just any other last bits of wisdom or advice that you are willing to share?
Yeah, so if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I should, look at my website and see, is it reflecting who I am today as a brand versus, who I was 4 years ago. So just literally scroll through your website and look at it and try and remove yourself from, all the knowledge you have of your industry. And honestly, if you can get a friend or five to do this for you and ask them, is it clear what I do? Does my imagery match, my professionalism? You know, can you find my pricing easily? Do you know how to navigate around? And preferably if there's someone less familiar with the wedding industry, that can be hugely helpful to have somebody else look at it from an outsider perspective and just give you honest truth on, you know, this doesn't make sense, or, I don't like how this is laid out. Like, this is confusing. This looks dated. Um, so you can obviously do this yourself, or like I said, if you can get a friend or five to do it, that's going to be huge feedback. Or
Mhm.
um, I offer website audits to, I'm sure, other designers to do also. If you wanted to have somebody with a designer set of eyes look at it who is going to be able to pick up on, okay, here's why this isn't working. So that's just the biggest thing you can do, is literally scroll through it and be like, okay,
Mhm.
is this reflecting who I am today? And can I navigate? Is there content? Is it visually appealing? All the three categories. Is it checking off the boxes? And then
Mhm.
I do have a freebie on my website that I go over 26 questions your website should answer yes to. That's
Cool.
I need to
Awesome. Well,
send
I
you
will
the
make
link
sure.
to that.
Yeah, I will link that in the show notes. That sounds fantastic. And I think everybody should run and grab that. I love that. 26 questions your website should be saying yes to. Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
yeah, they should.
Okay.
You should be answering yes to.
Okay, cool. I was just going to say, I loved what you were talking about having friends go through your website, especially those not in the wedding industry. Cause I've had wedding industry friends look at my website, but I haven't just sent it to like random people who aren't in the industry. And that's a really good idea because that's like a totally different set of eyes than someone in the industry. It is helpful. Me and my husband have, we do that with our websites, and it's helpful because he's, more outside the industry. And I'm definitely not in the bookkeeping industry. So I think that's that's been helpful for us. So I think, yeah, everyone should do that. Just go send it to like 5 friends and be like, hey, will you just like go through my website and
Yeah, you'll be
give me any
surprised what
feedback?
people will say. Like, they will
Mm-hmm.
tell you if it's working or not, and
Mm-hmm.
or if you're afraid they're not going to give you honest feedback, like find somebody else. Go
Yeah.
further out, because honestly, if you send it to your mom, she's probably going to say, "Oh, it's great," but so
Mm-hmm.
send it to someone
Yeah.
is going to tell you this does
Yeah.
not work.
100%. So, if any of my listeners are hearing this interview and they're like, "Oh, I need a new Showit website," or because tell me a little bit more. Like, do you do custom design and templates, or like what do you specialize in?
I specialize in DIY templates, but I do offer custom design and the
Okay.
audits. So, honestly, I think a lot of people nowadays, especially with money getting tighter, DIYing tends to be a better route to go. You know,
Mm.
if you can get a designer in your corner to help you, but there's so many tools at your disposal to DIY. You just need to have the right tools to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And um and you can also get a designer, whether it's myself or someone else, to kind of meet you in the middle, where maybe you've DIY'd the whole thing and then you have an audit and be like, hey, does this work I just did, does it make sense? Or
Mm-hmm.
some designers offer show it template customization so that you can kind of get it at a slightly more budget friendly investment. There's
Mm-hmm.
So I do both because I think there is value at both, but templates are definitely where my happy place is,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah, that's great.
I think even if you do hire a designer, you're gonna have to update something on your website at some point in time. So if you can
Mm-hmm.
get familiar with, okay, this, when I log in to Showit or Squarespace or Shopify or whatever, WordPress, this is what I do if I want to update a photo. Like, at least so you have the basics and understand what you're doing and aren't
Mm-hmm.
logging in and confused every time and being like, oh no, I gotta hire someone again. Like, you want to have the basic knowledge so that you're not constantly have to grab $100 bills out and be like, here, help me.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I've never totally understood that. How people, well, for example, my mom, speaking of moms, she has had, somebody design her website for her store in Bellingham, where you are. And whenever she needs to update it, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to call the guy and like get it.
hmm
And
Yeah, that
I
happens a
just can't
lot
imagine.
with
Yeah.
WordPress websites, where WordPress
Mhm.
designers will sell you on the, oh, you got to get on my maintenance plan and I'm gonna update
Mm.
everything for you, and that is a whole other
Yeah.
podcast. I have so many thoughts, but yeah, just it can end up quickly into like agencies charging and just like not delivering on like as much as they should for what they're charging. Where it's like, you could, like, these are basic things you
Mm.
can learn. A whole redesign. Maybe you want a designer because that's a big project,
Mhm.
and if you're right smack in the middle of busy wedding
Right.
season, that might not be feasible. But if it's something, more simple, like,
Mhm.
adding another gallery or updating a blog post, like, you should be able to do those sorts of things yourself confidently without having,
Mhm.
to panic each time.
Totally. Completely agree. Yeah. So if anyone, is interested in your services and your templates, what is the best way for them to find you and connect with you?
So my website is madewithboldness.com, and you can grab the checklist off of there, and you can get on my newsletter. My newsletter is where I send out my best stuff, and I'm consistently sending out newsletters. Instagram and I have a love-hate relationship. I'm on there at Made with Boldness. but I will disappear for weeks depending on what's going on. So if you want to connect with me, the email list is the best way. But if you have any questions and want to send me a DM, I do check those. So feel free.
Perfect. Yeah, I actually just signed up for your newsletter. It sounded very enticing, like the way you talked about it on your website. I was like, oh, I clearly need to be on that list. So I'm excited about it. It sounds great. Of course. Yeah. So everyone should go sign up for that. I will link everything in the show notes. And yeah, thank you for sharing all your expertise with us today. It's been a fun chat, and I'm excited to share this.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Event Crushed podcast. I hope you found value in this episode, and if you did, please consider sharing it with a wedding industry friend. We also hope you'll consider leaving a rating or review for the show to help other listeners find it. This podcast is edited and produced by Ace Sound Design. If you're looking to elevate your audio experience, their info can be found in the show description. As always, thank you for listening, and please connect with us on Instagram if you haven't already. Now, get out there and crush it.